Baton Rouge, it was in Houston, it was in other cities in the Gulf Coast, and I personally saw those helicopters going over just hour after hour. It was the Army Corps of Engineers that drained the city, that repaired the pumps, and started us with the ability to once again inhabit New Orleans. The truth is, our military perform a range of services for the safety of Americans beyond warfare. Fighting fires, preserving wetlands, and providing emergency medical services. Too few Americans fully appreciate what our veterans do in the aspect of this part of military service that you're sometimes called upon to do. The history of Virginia Tech and the future of Virginia Tech are tied closely with the support of military personnel. The Corps of Cadets dates back to the early days of the Institute that has become Virginia Tech. And the Corps grows stronger each year. The leadership and the attitude that our cadets learn from their commitment is often admired throughout Virginia Tech, throughout our campus. The pylons above the War Memorial Chapel speak 8 core values and virtues that are the inspiration to all of us at Virginia Tech. Brotherhood, honor, leadership, sacrifice, service, loyalty, duty, and utprosit. The last of these 8 virtues, utprosit, is the motto of Virginia Tech, and I'm sure everyone in this room and everyone on the Zoom knows that very well. For our military service, men and women, we also know that you are the embodiment of Virginia Tech's motto, utprosit. You serve our country, and you serve our fellow citizens, and you do it well. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, consumers. At this time, I would like to welcome to the stage Chan Kim, an Army Reservist and graduate student in Pamplin's Master of Science in Business Administration, with a concentration with the Business Analytics Program for student reflections. Hello, my name is Specialist Chan Kim with the 454th Ground Ambulance Company up in Beaver, West Virginia. And as he said, I'm a master's student for the MSBA PhD program. It is an honor and a privilege, as cliche as that may sound, to address friends, family, and most of all, veterans here in attendance, those who are watching at home, and those who are watching on our satellite cameras. Our theme, Salute to Veterans Day, was to acknowledge those who embody what it means to serve. Today's theme is aligned with our mission statement of the university, that I may serve. With a level of reverence and humility, we stand here to address you all, to show you our gratitude to your commitments to service. I just wanted to share one thing that is very near to my heart, and this materialized in between a conversation between my mentor and I about the concept of time. I've always been fascinated by the concept of time and how it, depending on the day, it seems to grow longer as we're looking at the clock, trying to clock out, or looking at the clock, trying to see when our lecture will end, and also how it shrinks. How it shrinks when we're reminiscing of our past years, and for some in attendance, your children's past years. As we discussed the fluidity of time, we eventually got to the end. We discussed how time ends and our relative mortality. He explained that all the names you know, their accomplishments will all be forgotten. Your name, my name, all of our accomplishments in this room will be forgotten in about 2 generations. It's an eerie feeling that you have once you get this perspective. You begin to question things like, what am I doing here? How am I going to spend my time? And what's the meaning of life? Then he explained to me the only path to relative immortality is what you pass on to your next generation. The wisdom you pass on, the impact you make to the next generation is what will always live on. So for the veterans who have passed, those who have made the ultimate sacrifice, those who are still serving, and those who are not, your impact to my generation and future generations of soldiers to come will live on as long as this great nation still stands. Not only did you influence my generation, but your contribution has been woven into every fabric of our great flag that always stands stoically amongst calm and chaos. That flag stands on the moon, in the sovereign states of our allies, and most of all, in our country. This community is unique. Fully understanding you have to be in it. For the drill sergeants who gave a young private a very warm welcoming as I stepped off that bus. To the NCOs that take time and effort to mentor these young privates, even though they test your patience every step of the way. And finally, to the officers, whether you be commissioned or non-commissioned, it is you who will carry on the legacy of this great nation into its next chapter in the everlasting story of the United States. In closing, I hope you remember this community of veterans by holding your loved ones a little tighter, to fully immerse yourself with those around you because you don't know when your time will be up. And finally, to dream of a world and a nation full of hope and possibility, because for those who did not make it back home, could not. To them, I owe a debt that can only be paid to live my life to its fullest extent and to pursue happiness every chance that I get. To them, I salute a sense of gratitude and a job well done to propel this new generation forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Recognizing and reflecting on the altruistic service and sacrifice of our veterans and active military persons throughout the history of our nation is indeed vital. At this time, I'd like to welcome Anna Hansen, Director of MBA Programs, and lead us in a moment of silence. So if you could direct your attention to the screens.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that introduction. And thanks to the summer class from Branch Hall and distinguished guests and participants of the Salute to Veterans Day hosted by the Pamplin College of Business. I come to you today from the Northern Virginia Center as the Director of MBA Programs, and also, as importantly or more so, as the mother of a United States Marine Corps veteran, a proud 2015 graduate of Virginia Tech, and as a colleague of active duty military spouses on our Pamplin graduate program staff here at Falls Church. It is my pleasure to join you today. Thank you for your service. We honor our country's active duty members and veterans with these words, as well as monuments, vigils, events, and federally recognized days, because we collectively benefit from the sacrifice of those who serve. These are outward expressions of our gratitude to those who were drafted, enlisted, or chose service to the country. According to data from the Department of Veterans Affairs, U.S. veterans represent less than 10% of the total U.S. adult population, meaning the vast majority of us do not have direct knowledge of all that it means to serve in our return. So setting aside this day as a national holiday is a meaningful way for us to come together as a country to say thank you. Yet while Veterans Day holds great importance, I believe it is incumbent upon us, and in keeping with our university's motto, "Proposal that I may serve," that we find ways throughout the year to support those who serve our country, whether through volunteer efforts or recognition of, perhaps a conversation with someone wearing an identifying cap and a t-shirt of the military, It is important we continue to support their service throughout the year. There's another group of associated individuals who know better than most what it means to support and honor our military personnel, and those are the immediate family members, wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, and children, all deeply and personally connected to the idea of those that we serve. These family members are critical support system, and I think they deserve our thanks as well. Thank you for your service. There are many ways in which we can hold close those who are actively serving or who have served. Quiet reflection of gratitude is one. Let us pause together in a moment of silence and hold these individuals in our hearts and minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. It is with great pleasure that I may introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Wanda J. Smith, Associate Professor Emerita of Management for the Pamplin College of Business, Executive Coach and Organizational Development Consultant, and Army veteran. Dr. Smith is a former U.S. Technical Communications Specialist. Her greatest honor has been to serve with veterans of the Vietnam War. After receiving an honorable discharge in 1977, she worked in the financial services and communications industries as an accountant and financial analyst. She also owned and operated several businesses prior to embarking on her academic career at 40 years of age. In 2016, Dr. Smith retired from Virginia Tech. In her academic career, she was a dedicated faculty member at Syracuse University, University of Oklahoma, and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. At these universities, she taught thousands of graduate and undergraduate students in courses such as leadership, finance, accounting, production management, organizational behavior, small business consulting, and human resources management. Her greatest achievement was receiving numerous teaching awards from highly selected professional and executive MBA programs. In her 30 years of consulting experience, her passion has been to help senior leaders and executives in organizations that drive sustainable growth. Examples of her organizational clients include KPMG, Volvo, Solomon Brothers, IBM, Wolseley, as well as the Institute for Leadership in Changing Times, police officer training, and the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. After retirement, she worked within the Virginia Tech Human Resource Division as an organizational consultant. In that role, she assisted a variety of Virginia Tech leaders and their organizations with strategic facilitation, leadership coaching, unit analysis, and strategic planning workshop delivery. In the area of community service, Dr. Smith serves on a variety of not-for-profit boards. Most importantly to her, she is well known as an advocate for children and a variety of successful aging initiatives. Without further ado, please help me give a warm Pamplin welcome to Dr. Wanda J. Smith.
Good morning. No. Good afternoon. I am always a little embarrassed when people introduce me. And so my typical response is, don't believe the hype. I am here not to honor me. I am here to share a few thoughts about this ceremony and what we do to honor our veterans. I'd like to thank Dana before I start because she stole my thunder with some of the statistics, but we're going to move on from that. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. I'd like to begin by, first of all, thanking Dean Sucre. I'm sorry, I see so many faces I haven't seen in a while, and it's exciting. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be your keynote speaker on this very special occasion. I would also like to thank you for being here because I know how limited your time is. So I will not go on and on. This day, this moment, is a full circle experience for me. I began my career in the military, and I'm ending my public speaking career honoring veterans and their families. So those of you who've been asked to deliver a message, you know that the first thing you start getting plagued with is this question: what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Well, I'm here. At 70 years of age, I could probably stand here and talk about me for a while, but then that would give you an opportunity to go to sleep. I have a much broader agenda, and that is, I'd like to give you a broader view of the life of veterans and their families. Having said that, I thought I should interview younger veterans. I thought that I should interview families of service members. And so I did that. As a researcher, that's the first go-to, right? And I learned a number of things change. And so, but those responses are going to be the foundation of my address today, their responses. But I want to begin with me, because you never pass up an opportunity to talk about yourself. So, in 1970, I did say 1970, hush. The Vietnam War and the elimination of the draft really created an unprecedented need for soldiers. So women and people of color responded to that call in amazing, record-breaking numbers. Those of you who know your history know this is true. So I, as a young adult at that point, burned my bra, and that's real, look it up, straightened my afro, yes, I did have one, and I put aside my Black Panther ideals and joined the U.S. Army. Now, I later learned there was a war in Washington about the training of men and women, co-ed training of men and women. So, I enlisted, guess what? I was a member of those co-ed training pilots. Now, imagine a Black Demi Moore in G.I. Jane. But the point that I want to make was, it was not easy. I just know that only 21% of the female soldiers in my basic training made it through. Even now, would you believe that co-ed training and performance eligibility issues remain a challenge, not just in the military, in many organizations? With that in mind, and that's a digression, I want to say that my advanced training was then, as you were told, as a tactical communication specialist. And my first duty station was 50th Signal Battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Now this was a unit of 400 men. I was one of 4 women. Now some of you may think that's a reason to celebrate. It was not. Okay. I have never been one to run away from a challenge, so I applied and was accepted to attend the Army's Airborne School. Now, that's 3 weeks of training hell. I made it through 2. I made it through ground week, tower week, and when they said, oh, you have to jump out of a C-130 at 1,250 feet 5 times, I said, you've got to be kidding me. I failed, and I will say to you, I returned to my unit as a leg. Now, a leg is a pejorative term used for any soldiers, and I see the veterans out there laughing at me, any soldier that does not make it through airborne school. Now, what I want you to know is when you don't make it, you walk the hall of shame, and you are assigned every dirty assignment you can possibly think of. Now, the one that was most unforgettable for me was that I was assigned to facilitate poorly designed workshops to the 82nd Airborne Division to prepare them for women in their units. Now, that door opened in December of '77, but I can tell you, giving training to a room full of proud, resistant, macho males saying, "Get ready for us, here we come," was a nightmare. It prepared me for teaching here at Pamplin. No. But you know, I want to share a perspective with you that you may not know about. Life off base was not great either. You need to remember that there were no wartime or veteran parades. There were instead movies and TV shows that depicted Vietnam veterans as drug-addicted warmongers who were crazed. Some of us call this baby killers. We could go on and on. What I want you to know is political infighting, peace marches, and anti-veterans activities were rampant. So much so that we were advised not to wear our uniform off base. I need you to hear that. Through these years, I endured racism, inequality, gender inequality, and several sexual assaults. Eventually, I left the military full of shame, trauma, and the feeling that I just did not belong. But I want you to hear that I stand here telling you that I walked away from that experience with many important things that have shaped who I am. I took away friends, lifetime friends, that still inspire me with their courage, their patriotism, and their determination. I took away an understanding that my strength is not dependent on anyone but me. I cracked the code of who I am. I became a voice for change. I put aside my sweet, meek, and quiet voice. Can you believe I was ever that way? Yes, but yes. I put that aside, and I decided that I was going to wear my crown of resilience and understand that through it all, I showed up. Now, that is a historical backdrop of my address today. Some of you could say it was a hysterical backdrop, but let's not go there. What I want you to hear is what's happening 45 years later. According to the DOD, guess what? This is where she stole my thunder, but I'll say it again. Fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the title veteran. This courageous group, and here's the distinction: wartime, peacetime, and ready reserve soldiers. We too often focus just on the wartime. I need you to hear: wartime, peacetime, and ready reserve soldiers have one thing in common. They live with the fear or anxiety of knowing that they may be called at any point in time to serve this country and potentially die for it. Now, if that's the case, what I need you to hear, that same data says that 90% of Americans have never worn a uniform, never eaten an MRE, never basically marched with bleeding blisters, never been isolated or put in a program where they feel isolated and lonely. They have never returned home changed, and their family and friends insist they remain the same. I need you to hear that nevertheless, somehow, this country has started a love affair with the military. We are currently engaging and honoring them in public and private meetings. We provide well-earned entitlements such as discounts I love those. For goods and services, special parking, I really love those. And even down to work preference points. There are so many things that I could say that this society is beginning to say, you deserve it. But here is also the truth on a practical level. I don't think it's enough. Now, hold on, let me justify that. There's an old saying, part of the rent we pay for living is brokenness. They have modified that saying to say part of the rent soldiers pay for serving is broken families. Now, I know that's a provocative statement, but it's provoked by consistent and scary statistics. You may know that addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, and other mental health challenges, divorces, all are significantly higher in the veteran population. Just in the Special Forces population, 70 to 80% of marriages fail. So when I say to you that we need to make sure that we recognize just not the veterans each day, but their families and their friends. So, here's what I want you to know. Those of you who've lived it, you can say amen if you'd like. As children of veterans, they often deal with changes in schools, unwanted separations from their friends, being the new kid, long separations from their parents, and the uncertainty of whether their mom or dad will come home okay. In contrast, military spouses frequently endure social isolation. That's the one thing I heard from every wife that I spoke to. They felt alone. Social isolation, career interruptions, spending holidays away from their extended family. At the same time, these partners are primarily the project managers of these moves. And they carry out the majority of the parental work. So, my 7 years, very long years, as a Special Forces officer's wife, painted a vivid picture for me of this planetary life. So, I want you to hear that it's for those reasons that I am here to say, when veterans experience career, education, or financial gaps, it's not them that suffers. Their entire family suffers. For these reasons, I am initiating a Hokie family call to duty. I want us to live out PROSA. I want you to do it, however, in the best interest of the military community. I want us to go beyond the basic optics of thank you for your service and actually think about intentional ways we can make a difference in their lives. For example, and I'm going to pick on the Hokie family right now. Faculty, I'm trying to see if we have anyone in here. Knowing that the sacrifices of military families are real and profound, you can demonstrate your support by simply including a military affiliation question in your student introductory exercise every semester. Imagine the cascading effect of that. You could, faculty, establish as a department special service award, merit-based, for veterans. Staff, you can urge military-connected staff to join VT Veterans Caucus. I was here for almost 30 years and never declared my and educational resources. Oh, and you can continue to support the ways military-connected Hokies relax, release, and now some of you don't get that joke, but that's okay. Students, I'm not leaving you out. Hello, you are on the front lines of this. I want you to initiate meaningful conversations. They can slice through everyone, children of military as well as the veterans themselves, sense of not belonging. I understand that they are typically older and non-traditional, but you can start those courageous conversations. You can be the friend. I love looking at IG quotes or even the photo they had in the paper today. It was veterans and friends. When you can see something like that where people have gone out of their way to connect with others, the others, you know that people are committed. Now, I've said a lot, but I've also said some things that did not apply to some of you in here, so here I am. Those of you who are not faculty, staff, or students, you can do something you can never forget. You can become an advocate. If you're capable, you can share financial resources. What do I mean by never forget? How many of you have actually gone to the Vietnam Veteran Memorial or the Unknown Soldier's Tomb? Those are unforgettable experiences. Imagine if you could pass that on to your children. I have my grandson over here. He's going, damn it. Okay? You know, when you start talking about becoming an advocate, vote to support educational attainment of military personnel in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Look it up. We are not doing it well. When you start talking about demanding Congress enacts legislation, now I'm about to step out there, to have permanent, not permanent, but required mental health services for all veterans. I need to say that again. Required mental health services for all veterans. And those of you who've got deep pockets, hire a veteran, donate to a program, donate to a center here on campus. We have them and they need resources. Those of you who can, do you know enlisted personnel, especially E4 and below, live at or below poverty level? Be Secret Santa, something, right? So, what's the bottom line? These families need you, not just on November 11th, not just on Veterans Day. For me, celebrating Veterans Day is like going on a special date for Valentine's Day. If you ain't loving me all year long, I ain't feeling it. Okay? So, join me. Show your appreciation all year long. Let's be the source of light in their darkness. Let's be the glue in their broken places. Let's be the hope and hands of hope that they need. What I need you all to hear is don't wait until you're told or asked. Don't wait, what can you do? All I'm asking you is beyond doing the right thing or being concerned about doing the right thing, just do something. Just do something. Why should you do something? Because quite honestly, your words and small acts of kindness can transform their world and potentially save a life. So, what's my takeaway? I guess it's don't be a part-time lover of military personnel. Thank you.
I would like to present you this gift for your service to to our nation, our college, and our keynote speaker for this inaugural Veterans Day celebration. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage a few of our Pamplin faculty veterans and members of the Program Steering Committee to introduce our special tribute. Justin Monday, Assistant Professor of Practice, Business Information Technology, U.S. Air Force veteran. Ron Poff, Assistant Professor of Practice, Management, U.S. Navy veteran. David Simpson, Professor of Practice, Business Information Technology, U.S. Navy veteran. And Joseph Simpson, Collegiate Assistant Professor of Management, U.S. Army veteran. So if you guys can join me up here.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming here in the cybersphere. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Mrs. Smith for those words. Very important perspective and a rare perspective that we hear. One of the most shocking stats I heard, I think, was that she's 70 years old, so you have got good genes. Today, what we celebrate was originally known as Armistice Day, to celebrate and honor those who served during World War I for great work. As many years passed in America, this day has become known as Veterans Day. We honor and celebrate those American service members who have sacrificed and served. They have a love of country. Here at Virginia Tech, we have a long and storied military tradition. We have our pylons that honor those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. As we stand here in Pamplin today and we educate and become future business leaders, it's time to reflect on that tradition and pause and consider why we have the freedoms that we have today.
Also, I'd like to thank Dean Hall for putting this together on this inaugural event. A lot of hard work and service. Thank you very much. You didn't have to, you wanted to. We appreciate that. Veterans Day is the day where we all take a moment to remember those who have served to make our country a better place, fight for our freedoms, and to bring peace to nations who are struggling to find it. The last verse of the U.S. Navy song states what Veterans Day means to me. Faith, courage, service true, with honor over all.
Each military service branch has a motto. Each of these mottos are either official or unofficial. We now recognize the mottos of each of the respective branches. For the U.S. Marine Corps, it's Semper Fidelis, or always faithful. They'll never let you forget it's Yet there's the U.S. Navy, anchors away. The U.S. Army, this will defend. The U.S. Air Force, to fly, fight, and win. Air power, anytime, anywhere. U.S. Coast Guard, Semper Paratus, always ready. U.S. Space Force, Semper Supra, always above.
Professor Emerita, let me just say from up here in Falls Church, Virginia Center, you nailed it. As a veteran who served 33 years in the Navy, the daughter is currently a CD, and a hopeful who serves the defense industry, building the robots that our service sailors here, Marine and Coast Guards today will depend upon in the future. It's not just the veterans, it's the spouses, it's the families who serve and sacrifice. Often, when we're very focused on supporting that range, they're not. So please, if you do know that today when you meet a veteran, ask them about their family. Ask them about what that meant to them. And I gotta tell you, I was starting today in the 70s in Georgia. I took the same airborne course. And it's no shame at all to be able to say after 2 weeks I didn't know not so perfectly good airplane. I also served with the 50th at the time. submit. People commit themselves to serve others in many ways and for many reasons. Veterans Day gives us a chance to formally recognize and honor service to the nation. Good proso provides the foundational core for OP's character and motivates a strong bond with military veterans. So many OPs have served and advanced the freedom and liberties we uniquely enjoy in the United States. The calling, though, really extends beyond uniform service to service in our communities and a commitment to the defense of democracy wherever and whenever it is served. Let's give thanks today in both directions to our veterans and to our citizens who place service before self, honoring them. And Wanda, to borrow a phrase, let today not be a day off, but a day on, respecting veterans, respecting service, committing ourselves to the post. Thank you.
As a high school student, anytime my science teachers didn't want to teach for the day, they would show us a movie. And it always had this kid who was overcoming all odds to win the 1960 National Science Fair. As a freshman here at Tech, I learned that same person actually designed Skipper, the cannon we fired during football games. Mr. Ingham then served a tour of duty after graduating before 4th Infantry Division. Homer then decided to approach his life as if it were an adventure to be savored. For years, he was a scuba instructor who traveled the world. When he worked for NASA, one of his jobs was to train the astronauts underwater to prepare them to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. He still vigorously pursues his hobby of amateur paleontology. He is credited with the discovery of 2 T-Rexes as well as many other significant finds. With so many impactful life experiences, Mr. Hickam took to write his stories in his books. Homer Hickam is the best-selling and award-winning author of 19 books, including the #1 New York Times memoir, Rocket Boys, which was adapted into that popular and inspiring film, October Sky. His latest memoir, Don't Blow Yourself Up, was released just last month. Without further ado, let's give a warm Pamplin College of Business welcome to Mr. Homer Hickam.
All right, I'm with Professor Smith. I don't see any really good reason to jump out the back of the seat like that. I figure that's why it's got wheels. So I was asked by Professor Puff, who said, you've got to tell the skipper story. So I'm going to tell the skipper story. I'm going to really compress it very quickly. But, so I was a cadet here at Virginia Tech, which might have been mentioned. I came here in 1960 after my experience as a rocket boy in Colwood, West Virginia, and my enrolled here in the engineering school and also the Board of Cadets. And at that time, our biggest rival was the Virginia Military Institute. And VMI, every Thanksgiving, Virginia Tech played VMI. That went on for decades. And it was called the Military Classic of the South. And it was held annually on Thanksgiving Day at Victory Stadium in Roanoke, Virginia. And it was a truly, really big deal. And so our cadet corps, which numbered about 4,000 cadets at that time, got on a train, a spur that came from Roanoke to Blacksburg called the Huckleberry. We all got on the Huckleberry. It's called that because it was so slow you could get on pick huckleberries along the way. And go to Roanoke, and there we would proudly march to Roanoke to Victory Stadium, and the VMI Cadet Corps would do the same. We would get on one side, they would get on the other, and we'd start chanting insults at each other. For one thing, after Thanksgiving, after the game, we got to go home. They didn't. They had to go back to campus and weren't allowed to go. So we would chant, we're going home, we're going home. And so, but they had this little brass cannon, more like a mortar, called the Little John, and they would bring it out and fire it, made a big pop, and then they would chant, where's your cannon? Where's your cannon? Long story short, a few cadets and I decided that Butch Ben Harper and George Fox were the other two, plus most of the corps. We really got together on this. We were going to build our own cannon. We had to kind of go behind administration back in order to do it. And we ultimately collected brass from everywhere, including my dad's coal mine back in Colwood. And Paul Huffman and Roanoke, the foundry there, agreed to cast this beautiful, gorgeous brass cannon, which I'm going to get to visit this evening. I'm really looking forward to visiting it. And we named the cannon Skipper after President John F. Kennedy, who had been assassinated in November of 1963. And then 2 weeks later was Thanksgiving, and that's when we were going to introduce the Skipper. So they marched in, the VMI Cadet Corps marched in, and we marched in, and they brought out their Little John, and they fired it off, and they started chanting, where's your cannon, where's your cannon? So we dragged out this humongous, big, Civil War style brass cannon. Butch Harper was on the regimental staff, ran over and said, Sonny, Sonny, Sonny. That's what they called me back then. Also Flash, but that's another story. But anyway, so put a big charge, it's the biggest charge you've got in there. And I go, okay guys, because I actually had a triple charge. Did not occur to us that we had tested a Skipper on the golf course. Victory Stadium is an enclosed stadium. So I threw that huge charge down this cannon. The VMI cadet football team was exercising right in front. And they come running over to see, what's this thing? And then they saw me throw this humongous charge down that tube, and they scattered like rabbits. The skipper went off, the biggest charge ever put in the skipper. It actually reared, it weighs about 600 pounds, it actually reared off the ground. A shockwave flew across the field. The shockwave, that sonic wave went right up through the VMI cadet corps, and some of them claimed their hands were blown off, but it definitely did crack the glass in the press box on the other side. And after my ears stopped ringing, I started to hear the chant behind me. Here's our king. So that's the story of Skipper. I have it in a new book, Don't Blow Yourself Up, and I have a reason for that. But this is to honor our veterans, and I was privileged to be a veteran of the United States Army. I actually went through Air Force ROTC, but final physical was my eyes weren't good enough, and they only wanted pilots, so they said, okay, we can't give you a commission, so do whatever you can do. And I figured, well, I'll just ask the Army, and the Army said, sure, you can come in the Army as a private E1 and work your way to OCS. So that's what I did. I went into Fort Leonard Wood, known as Fort Lawson Woods, Missouri, and there I went into basic training with a high percentage of soldiers who were there courtesy of the court system. At that time, it was 1966, sometimes rather than go to jail, they would say, why don't you join the Army? As a matter of fact, you were ordered to join the Army. So that was, we had an interesting mix there. We had college grads like me who were headed for OCS eventually, and then a mix of these young men. And of course, the training officers, the training NCOs, drill sergeants recognized immediately they had kind of a ringer in their midst of me. I tried to keep low profile, but they saw that I had some experience in the military already. So I ended up actually being a mentor for these young men. And that was very good for me to learn their background, the struggles that they had to overcome, and that now that we're in the military with me, and I had the opportunity to assist them in whatever way that I could. And so I thank God that I got that privilege of going in as a private and working with these young men. Ultimately, I did end up going to OCS at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And by the way, I would not have gotten through officer candidate school without the help of one. He was Sergeant E6 at that time, Willie Wilkerson. You can look him up. He's a great African-American soldier. He became an officer at the same time I did, one of the most highly decorated soldiers in Vietnam. So Willie, he was in the Special Forces Green Beret. So Willie got me through really OCS. My first duty assignment was out at Dugway Proving Ground, Utah, which I can't talk about. But I can tell you that 2 hours away from Dugway was Brigham Young University. And there were no young women at all on Dugway Proving. So twice a week, I drove a 4-hour round trip to take night classes at Brigham Young University to meet Mormon girls. And I have to tell you that after Virginia Tech, I thought BYU was a party school. That might tell you a little bit what we had here. My experience here at Virginia Tech and the Cadet Corps and our motto, that we may serve, actually I did get ingrained with that. And I felt that I called the personnel in the Pentagon after I was at Dugway for a year. I said, what's the plan for me? And they said, oh, we're just going to leave you at Dugway. You're getting the great ratings there. We'll just leave you there. And I thought about it, and I thought about the experience that I had here at Virginia Tech, the great training that I had in the Cadet Corps here. And then also those young men in basic, most of whom were either in Vietnam or heading for Vietnam. So I said, I want to volunteer for Vietnam. There was a long pause on the other end of that phone conversation, but I did get assigned to Vietnam. On the flight over, by the way, I sat with a Texas A&M cadet, former, he graduated from Texas A&M. His name was Rick Terrell. He was in the artillery. And on the way over on a bottle of scotch, he taught me how to call in artillery. And thank goodness he did. It was a very good thing to know. And Rick said, so an egg can teach a Hokie something. And I said, yes, sir. Rick, by the way, was wounded, I think, at least 3 times. He was a forward observer. Every time I would meet him, he was passed up in some way, had been shipped back to the States and come back, and kept going back and forth. My first duty assignment was a place called Dock Toe. If you've ever seen the movie Hamburger Hill, the Battle of Dock Toe was almost exactly the same situation. In Vietnam, the strategy was to try to entice the North Vietnamese army to fight in a conventional way. That essentially meant that they could pick the battlefield. And so when they did, and we had to go up against these very highly trained, very highly motivated, and very well-armed North Vietnamese army soldiers, they were usually in a commanding position, meaning up on a mountain. And so within a week of me being in Vietnam, I found myself at the base of that mountain with the 4th Infantry Division. They were definitely straight legs. They were draftees for the most part, and they were told to go up that mountain, and they did. Over and over and over again. It was the most amazing thing to observe. Our young people, with just basic and advanced individual training, sent to Vietnam and going up that mountain. But that's the kind of people that we had over in Vietnam. And I'm honored just by being a fellow Vietnam veteran. I was able to spend a year over there. I only got blown up once, and survived that, and went through the Tet Offensive in February of '68, and then went back home, and the Army in its wisdom decided to send me to Puerto Rico, where to be a reserve advisor, and they didn't really need me, so I learned how to scuba dive while I was there, which was really a good thing for the rest of my career. Now, I have to say about Vietnam veterans is that it is, yes, everybody should visit the wall, and there's a traveling wall also. If you ever see it coming around your town, definitely go see it. 3 of my buddies in Squadron A from Virginia Tech are on that wall, and we don't want to ever forget them. But there are also veterans, Vietnam veterans, and veterans of all our wars. But of course, I'm especially affiliated and care about these Vietnam veterans, many of whom are home, they are breathing, but they never really return. And so we need to look after them as we look after all of our veterans. My next phase in terms of working with veterans was that after I got out of the Army, I was a Department of Army civilian for a while, and that's when I started all the research that ultimately led to my first book, Torpedo Junction. Torpedo Junction was the story of the huge battle that took place off the East Coast during World War II. Most people don't know anything about it unless you read Torpedo Junction. You won't either. Between January of 1942 and July of 1942, over 400 American and Allied ships were sunk off our East Coast. 400. And that was the German U-boats came across from France, and of course also Germany. You know, I had an NASA career. A major part of my career was training the astronauts, and of course a high percentage of the astronauts were veterans, and get an opportunity to know them and work with them was also a great privilege. But I have to say that anybody that was brave enough to crawl aboard that space shuttle, because it was a dangerous beast, I'll take my hat off to them any day. And one of those astronauts, and I was privileged to be her training manager, and Professor Smith, who reminds me very much of this woman. Her name was Mae Jemison, and the first African-American woman to fly into space. And I was privileged to be her training manager and spent many, many months over in Japan with her in the process. In 2001, 9/11 occurred, of course, as you know, and I was asked to write a book that would kind of pump up the American public, which was really shaken at that time. So I ended up writing you could call it a self-help book, and it was called We Are Not Afraid. And it was my belief, and what I put forth in this was that the American people were not capable of being so frightened that they could not recover from this, and that we were not afraid. And I based that on the values of the people in this mining town of Coalwood where I was raised. What were their values? When you stop to think about it, in this little coal town, every day, all the men went off to work in this deep, dark, dirty, dangerous coal mine. The women saw them off every day. They weren't quite sure what would happen, whether they would be okay, whether the men would be okay. And the rule was that if a man was killed in the mine or so hurt that he could not work in the mine, they had to leave town. The houses were company houses, and therefore it was needed for the healthy miner and the new family that would come in. That was, if you think about it, a real prescription for fear. Yet they were not afraid because they had these values. They were proud of who they were. Instead, they were coal miners. They were producing the coal to make steel. The country needed steel. They stood up for what they believed. They knew exactly what they believed, and ultimately they believed in raising their children and sending them off to college or to a good life in any way that they could. They kept their family together, that the family was all important, and they trusted in God, but relied on themselves. Now, when I reflect on it, I realize that those values in Coalwood are actually the values of all of our veterans. And especially, I have to say, our most recent veterans, the one who served so gallantly in Iraq and Afghanistan, and this entire 20 years or more war on terror that we've had. I don't know, frankly, how they have endured this. Tour after tour after tour, families leaving their families behind. They are the most amazing people, and I honor them because they have the values that I started to learn here, that, yes, reflect where I was grown up, where I grew up in Coalwood, but what I realized that now these wonderful young people have and did for us. They are proud of who they are. They're Americans. They're American military personnel. They stand up for what they believe. They believe in freedom, and they sacrifice themselves, not for themselves, but for freedom, not only of this country, but of the world. They keep their family together. Veterans, we are family, just like we are family here at Virginia Tech. And they trust in God, but they rely on themselves. God bless the U.S. military. Thank you.
Before we conclude this event, I would like to invite to the stage Dr. Janice Branch Hall, Pamplin's Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. It is through her thought leadership that Pamplin is the first college of Virginia Tech to host a college-wide celebration honoring our veterans and military persons. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hall.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It has been such a great honor to celebrate all of our veterans on this special occasion, and this is just the beginning, okay? The Pamplin College of Business will continue to illuminate the experiences of our veteran community, show our gratitude, and offer exceptional care and services to those who have given so much. For all of our veterans, we have designed the commemorative Hokie lapel pin that you see on your screens, and this shield that you see on your screen. So be sure to grab one if you're in Pamplin Hall or in Falls Church. For those who are joining us via Zoom, please send us your mailing address and we will mail one directly to you. Now, I am so excited to announce 3 ways you too can support our veteran community. Now, first, the Pamplin College of Business is currently collecting personal items to donate to the Homeless Veterans Program, a segment of voluntary services at the Salem, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. Veterans Affairs Medical Centers. We welcome donations in person or via mail to the Pamplin Hall and Falls Church locations. For more information, please contact Cassie Davis at cassie@bt.edu. Deadline to donate items is next Friday, November 19th, and we will continue this effort annually. Secondly, Virginia Tech partners with Operation Hat Trick to generate awareness and support for the recovery of wounded service members and veterans through the sale of co-branded merchandise and products. Proceeds are donated to selected organizations that support the Operation Hat Trick mission. In 2020, Virginia Tech was selected as the runner-up for Operation Hat Trick's Excellence in Service Award, where $8,000 was donated to the local Richmond Fisher House on behalf of the university. To learn more about how you too can support the university's efforts, please scan the QR code you see on your screen and contact Jessica Hodder, Director of Brand Development and Trademark Licensing at jhodder@bt.edu. And I believe Jessica is still here if you have any questions in Pamplin Hall. And last but certainly not least, the Southwest Virginia Veterans Cemetery opened in Dublin, Virginia in 2011 and is one of 3 veteran cemeteries in Virginia. The cemetery is 80 acres and was purchased from the Bradford Army Ammunition Plant. The first phase of the cemetery is 24 acres and will accommodate 9,000 veterans before phase 2 opens. The Southwest Virginia Veterans Cemetery is raising funds to purchase a Veterans Tribute Arch to sit at the entrance to the Memorial Walk, which runs the length of the cemetery, ending at the Wall of Honor. Furthermore, the holiday wreath-laying ceremony will be held at the cemetery on Saturday, December 18th, and will be open to the public. For more information about these efforts, please contact Ginger Clayton, Chairman of the Veterans Tribute Arch Committee at ginger@bt.edu. So as we conclude this evening, I would like to thank the Veterans Day Planning Committee, Emily McCorkle and Cassie Davis, who really brought this vision to life, Justin Monday, Ron Koff, David Simpson, and Joe Simpson, who really helped to shape the program experience. I would also like to thank our planning partners, Pamplin's Office for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. As I mentioned earlier, the best is yet to come. We will be designing some amazing experiences to really elevate the belongingness of all of our populations in Pamplin. I also want to thank Elizabeth Mitchell and the advancement team for all of your efforts. In particular, Jeremy Norman, who's here, bless your heart. You have really absorbed my persistence over the last few months of planning, and I sincerely thank you for your amazing efforts. I also want to thank our undergraduate advertising agency, Prism. Prism is responsible for the amazing video tributes you saw today, along with our social media postings, photography, and videography. Anna Sherrod and Kathleen Finn, thank you so much for taking the lead on this. I also want to thank members of our Falls Church campus, in particular Nicole Gerwin and other members for bringing the live Zoom experience to Falls Church. I also want to thank Jim Dickens and Pamplin's Information Technology for guiding us through this hybrid landscape that is new to me, certainly. Lastly, I want to thank our esteemed guest speakers and of course our MC for this evening, Reed Funter. Thank you for making this a memorable occasion. I want to thank all of you in person and virtually, and to our veterans, it has been an honor to serve and celebrate you today. Thank you again for your altruistic service to our nation. Until next year, have a great evening, and please enjoy the refreshments that we have here in Pamplin Hall and in Falls Church. Good night, everyone. Thank you.